So this is section 2.6, proving angles congruent. So when we finish, we hope to be able to prove and apply theorems about angles. So first let's go over the definition of a theorem. A theorem is a conjecture or statement that you prove to be true. So now let's take a look at the vertical angles theorem. So we're going to prove this theorem in a second. So this one says vertical angles are congruent. Angle 1 is congruent to angle 3, and angle 2 is congruent to angle 4. So when we're going to prove these, it's helpful if you can write it in the form of a hypothesis and conclusion or conditional statement. So we're going to put if vertical angle, then congruent. That's our bare bones, poor grammar way to do it. Okay, so we have our two-column proofs set up. So notice that I have all of my statements. The only thing that we're going to need to fill in are the reasons. And I want you to be aware that you can use any of the given information, definitions, properties, postulates, or previously proven theorems as any of these reasons over here whenever you're writing a proof. Okay, let's take a look at the first statement. Angle 1 and angle 3 are vertical angles, and that is information that they gave us. Now statement 2, angle 1 and angle 2 are supplementary. Angle 2 and angle 3 are supplementary. So that is angles that form a linear pair are supplementary. Now let's take a look at statement 3. The measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2, that's these two angles right here, is equal to 180 degrees. Now let's take a look at the second statement. The measure of angle 2 plus the measure of angle 3 is equal to 180 degrees. So this is either, you can write either the definition of supplementary angles, or we can put something that's a little more. Okay, so the sum of the measures of supplementary angles is 180 degrees. So the sum of the measures of supplementary angles is 180 degrees. Okay, so statement 4 says that the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 is equal to the measure of angle 2 plus the measure of angle 3. So this is the transitive property of equality. Now the reason it's not the addition property of equality is we do not know that the measure of angle 1 and the measure of angle 3 are the same. That's what we're trying to prove. Now to get to step 5, we subtracted the measure of angle 2 from both sides. So that is going to be the subtraction property of equality. So from here, if we have the measure of angle 1 is equal to the measure of angle 3, then from there we can say that angle 1 is congruent to angle 3, and our reasoning here is angles with the same measure are congruent. Now let's go on to another example. let's try this one. So we're going to use the vertical angles theorem in this proof. So they tell us that angle 1 and angle 4 are congruent. We want to prove that angle 2 and angle 3 are congruent. So we could do this without the vertical angles theorem, but the vertical angles theorem is going to make life so much simpler. So for the first one, angle 1 is congruent to angle 4. They gave us that. The second statement, angle 4 is congruent to angle 2. So that's angle 4, angle 2. Oh, those are vertical angles. So I can put that vertical angles are congruent. So now for step 3, they have angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. So for this one, they're using the transitive properties of congruence. So they went from 1 to 4, from 4 to 2, so I can go from 1 to 2. Now our next statement, number 4, says that angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. Oh, that's the vertical angles are congruent. And next we have angle 2 is congruent to angle 3, and we can put that because the transitive properties of congruence. Now let's take a look at a few more theorems. So the congruent supplements theorem says that if two angles are supplements of the same angle, now remember, if you're a supplement, that's 180 degrees, then the two angles are congruent. Now we're going to take a look at the congruent complements theorem. So if two angles are complements of the same angle, remember angles that are complementary have a sum of 90 degrees, then the two angles are congruent. So if angle 1 and angle 2 are complements, and angle 3 and angle 2 are complements, then I know that angle 1 and angle 3 are congruent. So let's take a look at theorem 2.4. All right angles are congruent. So if you're a right angle, you're congruent to any other right angle. Theorem 2.5. If two angles are congruent and supplementary, then each is a right angle. So if angle 1 is congruent to angle 2, and angle 1 and angle 2 are supplements, then I know that the measure of angle 1 and the measure of angle 2 is 90 degrees.